Retention Strategies from Research to Practice. I'm Dr. Kevin Smith, and joining me today is Dr. Lori Lee, and we're from the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast. And we wanted to define persistence in adult education. And persistence can be seen as being comprised of two parts. The first part's intensity, or the hours of instruction students attend per month. The second's duration, the months of engagement and instruction over time. And Dr. John Cummings did a nice job defining persistence. And he notes that persistence rates are reported as hours of instruction, which we just mentioned, during a specific period of months, typically over a year. And adult education programs often refer to persistence as retention. There's a little bit of difference there. I like to think that persistence is what the students do, making sure the students stick around, and retention is what programs do to ensure that students stick around. And they measure it by recording participation in formal classes or tutoring sessions, again, over a specific period of time. I really like his further definition, and he states that adults staying in programs for as long as they can really is persistence, engaging in self-directed study or distance education when they can't, and returning to program services, dropping back in as soon as the demands of their lives allow. And I really like the way he defined that. And I know all the challenges that our programs and our students have had over the course of the past year have been incredible. And we really appreciate your efforts as educators to ensure that our students persist, because we know it's far less challenging to ensure that the students you have stick around than to recruit new students, which is of course a diminishing pool. So we get much more effects from ensuring that our students stick around in our programs and doing what we can to ensure that.
So Kevin did a nice job of explaining exactly what persistence is. And so now we want to look at who actually does persist in adult education. And so we're going to examine several studies that have been conducted in regard to the characteristics of persistence in adult educators. And so the first one that we're going to look at is Greenberg et al. And she noted that second language learners and also older students were more likely to persist in adult education. And in fact, in her study, she found that over 54% of completers of an adult education program that she looked at were English learners, while about 45% were native speakers. Also, she found that the mean age of completers was a little over 36 years old, while non-completers were about 29 years old. One of the things she noted was the fact that perhaps with younger students, there could be issues with maturity. And she was particularly talking about students that were younger than 22, that they had sometimes issues with staying on task and actually attending class, those kinds of things. So those could be issues with some of the younger students. Also, Greenberg found that there were several other characteristics of that influence persistence. One of those was previous educational history. So we're talking about even if they had attended adult education programs in the past. And in fact, if they had, they were more likely to persist. And so they had some resilience and were ready to take on some of those challenges that perhaps they had not been able to overcome in the past. And then avoidance of reading. This was a characteristic of students that did not persist. So if they avoided reading, if they had a view of themselves where they felt like they couldn't understand what was the written material that was presented to them, the class material, they had a problem persisting. Oftentimes they felt like the material in class was too difficult for them. Low reading skills. This actually is a little counterintuitive. One might think that if someone has low reading skills that they might become discouraged, but actually they persisted. Oftentimes, students with those low reading skills recognize the need to improve their skills and abilities, and so they persisted through the program. And as you might think, economic hardship definitely played a part. And if someone was experiencing that economic hardship, it was much more difficult for them to persist. So now let's look at a couple of other studies, Sabatini and Millard. They also noted the age factor, with Sabatini in particular, that older students were more likely to persist. But then found, as did Greenberg, that there was an inverse relationship between reading abilities and persistence. The lower level skills equaled higher levels of persistence. And then also Millard found some interesting things. And some of these are certainly not surprising. If students had higher levels of help on literacy and mathematics tasks from family members and friends. And so what we're really talking about is they have a strong support network. And so if students have that support with their friends, with their family, they are more likely to persist. And then greater life satisfaction. So these students had goals. They had skills in what we might refer to as pathways thinking. So when they examined their goals, they could actually break them down into steps. They saw what they needed to do. And actually programs can help develop this kind of thinking in students. And so they were confident that they could accomplish their goals. And then they reported fewer obstacles to program attendance. So they could actually come to class. They had the ability to get there, to participate. And so if they had those fewer obstacles, then they were certainly more likely to persist.
Excellent. Thanks, Lori. And we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the strategies that programs can focus on to help ensure student persistence. And one of those is cost benefit analysis, and another is learner motivations. So what Lori and I have shared so far are findings from different studies that have been focused on student persistence and program retention in adult education. So this is from a literature review, and it's been confirmed over time that the following program directed activities really help ensure that students persist. So Lori gave you a nice overview of the types of students who persist. We're going to share with you now some strategies to help ensure that students do persist regardless of their background. So the first of those is assisting students to understand the cost benefit analysis of program participation and persistence. And that could be done a couple of different ways. One, there's a lot of data out there that shows the more education students have, the higher their income is, and the more likely they are to be employed. So the unemployment rates for folks with higher education levels, including high school diplomas and beyond, they have far fewer unemployment issues than students with less education. And of course, much higher earnings as well. On top of that, really helping align your program with next steps that a student might want to take. So after they finish the adult education program, what might their next steps be? So really determining their goals and helping the students ensure that you're helping them meet their goals by participating in your program, by not just providing the education you are, but also connecting them along the way with the steps that they have for their future goals. And whether that's employment, helping their family, there are a lot of different motivations that students have for coming to adult education. So really understanding those motivations, is it to help your student or children with classwork? Is it to become better assimilated in society by learning the local language? Is it by helping to either get employed by providing the skills that would help with employment or further employment or advance your employment level? All of those things are important to consider along with live context. And luckily, one of our fantastic colleagues in Broward County, Brian Bush, has been working on some strategies aligned with these research findings. And we're going to provide Brian with a few moments to talk about what that's looked like in Broward County over the past couple of years.
Thank you, Dr. Smith and Dr. Lee. It's a pleasure to join you here today. My name's Brian Bush from Atlantic Technical College in Broward County, Florida. When we're talking about cost-benefit analysis and our adult education students, this is a concept that they already understand when they come into the door and want to enter our programs. I mean, sure, you do get some students that are here because it's been a lifelong goal to earn their high school diploma, or, they just want to navigate conversation more naturally and easily in a new country. But most of our students are showing up because they need the benefits of our programs to get over that next hurdle that they're currently facing. And now it becomes our job to extend that cost benefit analysis, not just to that short-term immediate goal, that next hurdle that they're facing in life that's going to get them that job that's going to pay a little bit more, but really try and open their eyes and minds to the idea of, looking beyond that next goal, that immediate goal, and starting to have a long-term picture on some of this stuff. And yes, we want to support you. We're going to help you get to that short-term goal, but also what comes after that, what comes next, and really showing them the cost benefit analysis of what it looks like if you continue on and you transition from ESOL into a GED program, or if you transition from that into a post-secondary opportunity, and showing them the analysis of what higher pay comes with those higher credentials as they move up that scale. And just like any teaching, we're all educators here, so we know that I can't just show you a chart, or I can't just tell you one time and then expect that you know it and you're going to live by it. So it's really up to us to be consistent. It's not a one and done. I don't show you this chart at intake and then now, okay, I've changed your life, I've changed your goals, and now you're going to persist on. This really has to be consistent from the intake, where you sit down and you explain these things with the student, and you show them what the process is going to look like, what the timeline is going to feel like. And then when they enter the classroom, the teachers are going to continue with that message. They're going to continue with that cost benefit analysis. They're going to continue to promote those short-term and long-term goals, so that the students always, that ties into the next piece, besides for the cost benefit analysis, but what are the learner motivations and life contexts that are going on there, and continuing to tap into that on a repeated and consistent basis. So even on those days where it's tough for the student to get going, they've got a lot going on in their lives, they get to the classroom and they're dependent on us to help guide them and support them through it, reminding them why they started, so that they have that encouragement to keep going. These things are measures that we need to put in place and really live by them on a consistent basis. Dr. Lee was talking about some of the research conducted by Greenberg. It talks about ESOL students are more likely to persist. Developing readers and early literacy learners are more likely to persist. That's because the challenges in their life are so difficult and creating such a storm that there's some urgency and really a strong need. And that's what their life context and their learner motivation is coming from. So as long as they feel connected to meeting that next goal, they're going to continue to persist. Another interesting point was that economic hardship sometimes leads to a lack of persistence. But if you look at that a little bit deeper and examine it, sometimes we would think, oh, economic hardship, they've got to go to work, or they've got to pay their next bill, so they didn't make time for class. But really, that's easy to make those excuses. But what's within our control, within our programs, and self-examining, if I'm facing economic hardship and I truly understand the cost benefit analysis of persisting, is it more that, I had to go to work and I had to pay that next bill? Or is there a possibility that sometimes when they enter into those classrooms, it doesn't align with their learner motivation? What they're learning in that class, is it contextualized to their needs? Is it contextualized to transitioning on to those post-secondary opportunities? Is it career aligned? And if we're providing those things in the classroom, even economic hardship aligned with that cost benefit analysis can pay great dividends for us in capturing a little bit more student persistence. The persistence, it's up to them. It's out of our control. It's our job to strategically and intentionally navigate that mindset with them and continue to support it and continue to remediate it and continue to deliver that message. It's not a one and done. We need to continue to push it. But this is not, the single strategy that we're going to implement and turn around our student persistence rates. There are other strategies. I know Dr. Smith and Dr. Lee. What else is there that we could be doing within our programs?
Thanks, Brian. It was so great to hear all of the things that you're doing in Broward to ensure that students see the cost benefit as well as learner motivations. And the second strategy that we're going to talk about is adapting programs to the needs and interests of students to ensure, again, that they persist. And from in-depth case studies, we found that if you are able to adapt your program in the following ways, it may help with persistence. And the first is making sure that you have flexible schedules, because we know our students work, they have family needs. There's so many things going on in these students' lives. As Brian mentioned, they have a lot of odds against them in some cases. So programs need to do all that they can to assure that they're being accommodating with student schedules that sometimes change. Their work schedules change, childcare, all those things can change. So ensuring that programs provide a wide variety of schedules is critical to ensure that students can persist. And the second one, and Brian hinted at this a little bit, is adapting program curriculum to make sure it connects to the needs and interest of students. Because as he mentioned, if you're providing curriculum and instruction that students see meets their needs, they're much more likely to stick around. And that can be ties to their career goals, trying to bring in text, for example, or mathematical problems that align to the next stage in their career planning can be very beneficial. And then providing supports to family reading content. So, if you're in a course where you're teaching English and you might want to teach the students, these are strategies that you might want to use to help your students at home, to help them become better in their studies as well. So there's a couple of things programs can do. And again, it's just things sometimes that people may have thought of or may not have thought of. But if you can make a conscious effort to really consider these items, it really can help ensure that students persist because they'll see the benefit of coming. And that's really the critical goal that you have as a program, ensuring that students know why they're there, they know what their goals are, and they see that what you're providing them are aligned with their goals. So we wanted to share a few other resources that might be beneficial for you. The What Works Clearinghouse is part of the Institute of Education Sciences at the U.S. Department of Education and at the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast. Lori and I actually work under a contract with IES, or the Institute of Education Sciences, and they provide practice guides. We were so excited in the past month when they put out this practice guide that's focused on designing and delivering career pathways at community colleges. And these practice guides are created through panels of experts in the field and practitioners from across the country. And they really focus on roughly the last 20 years of research to say, what should programs be doing? And this guide's focused on career pathways, but it really makes some nice ties to adult education that are important. So all of the practice guides provide recommendations. So what are some things that programs should be doing? And I'm going to real briefly talk about these recommendations and the levels of evidence for each one. And the level of evidence means how much research is out there on this particular recommendation. And then were the findings positive? Were they significant? So we'll talk just real briefly about that and then share out a little bit about the tools that these practice guides share. So the first recommendation was intentionally design and structure career pathways to enable students to further their education, secure a job, and advance in employment. And there's a moderate amount of evidence. So it's pretty well entrenched. This is something that programs should be doing. And there are a lot of ties to adult education. So again, ensuring that students in your adult education program know about these career pathways. The second is delivering integrated basic skill instruction to accelerate students' entry into and successful completion of career pathways. There's moderate evidence there as well. And that really is tied to adult education. The idea of integrating those skills that are important for careers into adult education programs. That's really what recommendation 2 is about. 3, we just talked about, and I was so glad the practice guide mentioned this as well, offering those flexible instructional delivery schedules and models to help ensure that students can accumulate credits and non-degree credentials along these career pathways. So they may start out with some minor credentials or credits and then build on those in a stackable way. There's not as much evidence behind that, but we know it's helpful. Again, it just hasn't been studied as much, which is why the level of evidence for that's minimal. Then 4, providing those coordinated comprehensive student supports to improve the credit accumulation and completion of non-degree credentials along those career pathways. So ensuring, and this is important not just for career pathways, but for adult education in general, those wraparound services. What can you do to help ensure that your student gets to you and can continue coming? Is that transportation? Is it helping them find food banks? Whatever, to make sure that their life is stable and their family is supported so that they can attend classes. That's really what recommendation 4 is about. And then 5, develop and continuously leveraging partnerships to prepare students and advance their labor market success. So really try to tie in with those employers that you have in the area, ensuring you have good partnerships with them and they know that you offer adult education services. And on the converse of that, that they're helpful in ensuring that students can make it through career pathways. As an employer or as someone who's providing scholarship opportunities, there's a lot of different ways those partnerships can work, but ensuring that that's part of what our programs do. So one last thing we wanted to share, this practice guide is just chock full of resources like this career pathways resource mapping template to help think about. And these are realistic tools that actually come from colleges across the United States who offer career pathways. So a lot of the panelists either are part of programs who actually have these tools and wanted to share them, or found tools that would be beneficial. So this example just shows you if you're assisting partners in identifying available resources to support the development and operation of programs like this around career pathways, thinking about what do they offer, what are the resource gaps, what do we need, how do they help, who is the contact information, and is this working for us? So really just thinking about, brainstorming, not only brainstorming, but really trying to evaluate, what does this look like? What do we offer? And there are a lot of different guides like this in the practice guides and resources for programs who are trying to build in and connect with career pathways. So we wanted to share again with you some of the tools and templates that might be helpful, and there are many in this practice guide. So with that, we're going to turn it back over to Brian Bush from Broward, who's going to share again the work that they've been doing to help ensure that students have integrated career pathways and really are working along a way in their adult education programs to find success.
I think the gist of what we're getting at here today is really trying to contextualize what we're doing in the classroom to the needs of the students, and then helping guide and shift and shape so that the students in their minds know what those needs are, not just on this first hurdle, this first preliminary step, but in a long-term fashion so that they really understand, we know you showed up for reason X, but if you persist and you continue, there's lots of benefits that you're going to be able to reap at the end of it. We're in a tremendous position here where we have a lot of flexibility in adult ed to redesign and shape our programs to fit the students. And I know a lot of times what we do is we kind of design a program operationally, and we have the students come in and we expect the students to fit into whatever we've implemented, but really trying to look at it from an opposite viewpoint and say, just reach out, engage the students and say, what is it that they need? What's going to make our program meld and mold to fit to their needs, and when we do that, we're finding that we've been a lot more successful in getting the students to persist. And I know we're preaching to the choir here. The challenges really come when you're trying to implement this, not within a bunch of like-minded individuals here, but I'm trying to implement this across all my programs within a school, or all the programs within a school district, and trying to shape and shift everybody into that right same direction is really where the work is going to come into play. But this can be done at all levels. It can be done in all subjects by contextualizing the learning that's going on in the classroom to the needs of the students, as long as when you're doing your program design and setting up your supports, those needs of the students guide each and every decision you make. And that's just some from insight from Broward County.